The dragon's last breath carried a secret. Find the human who fed me. The wind howled across the empty cliffs, carrying the taste of rain and ash. The world had forgotten dragons, or maybe it had only pretended to forget. The mountains were silent graves now, cold and hollow, filled with the bones of fire that once ruled the skies. But in one hidden cave, deep beyond the reach of soldiers or machines, something still breathed, weak and slow, like an old memory refusing to die. Evan had never meant to find it. He was just a boy from the lowlands, a quiet worker at the scrapyards, small, thin, and always covered in dust. Every evening after the last siren, he climbed the forbidden path through the ruins, carrying scraps of meat and water hidden in a cloth bag. No one followed him, because no one wanted to walk that cursed trail. People said ghosts lived there, the kind that burned. The cave entrance was nothing more than a crack between two jagged rocks. A faint red glow came from inside. Not bright, but enough to make the air shimmer. Evan stepped inside, heart pounding. He could smell smoke, old and heavy. And then he heard it. That deep, rumbling breath that made the stones vibrate. The dragon lay there, scales cracked like old glass. Wings torn and faded. Its eyes were closed. Its body too weak to move. Even dying, it looked powerful, older than time itself. Evan's hands trembled as he placed the food beside it. The first time he had done that, weeks ago, the dragon hadn't moved. But now, one golden eye opened, slow and tired. Evan froze. The air felt thicker. His mouth went dry. The dragon spoke. Its voice wasn't a sound, but a vibration, deep in Evan's bones. "You again," it said, the words heavy with age and sorrow. Evan couldn't answer. He had no idea dragons could speak, or that they would speak to a human like him. The world had told him dragons were beasts, monsters, enemies of mankind, but this creature didn't feel evil. It felt broken. He whispered, "I brought food again." His voice barely a breath. The dragon's nostrils flared, smoke curling weakly into the air. "You risk much, human child," it said. "Do you not fear your kind's laws?" Evan swallowed hard. "They don't come here," he said. "They say this place is cursed." The dragon's lips twitched almost like a smile. "Cursed," it echoed softly. "Yes. Cursed by truth." Evan didn't understand, but the way the dragon spoke made his chest tighten. There was something sad, something ancient hiding behind those eyes. He had seen dying animals before, stray dogs on the streets, birds that fell from the sky. But this was different. It was like watching the end of a legend. He looked around the cave, blackened walls, bones of other dragons scattered like forgotten relics. Some were small, others massive, their horns reaching toward the ceiling like silent prayers. The air smelled of ash and old blood. Evan whispered, "Are you the last?" For a long time, the dragon said nothing. Only the slow rise and fall of its chest filled the silence. Then softly it answered, "The last that remembers." Lightning flashed outside the cave. Thunder rolled across the cliffs. Evan sat down near the dragon, feeling its warmth even through the cold air. He didn't know why he kept coming back. Maybe because the dragon looked like it needed him. Maybe because he needed something to believe in. The dragon's breathing grew slower, almost fading. Evan panicked. "Hey, stay awake," he said, touching its cracked scales. "I'll bring more food tomorrow, I promise." The dragon's eye flickered open again. "Tomorrow," it murmured. Such a small word for something I no longer have. Evan frowned. "What do you mean?" Smoke rose weakly from the dragon's mouth. "I am dying, child," it said, "and before my fire goes out, I must see the one who fed me." Evan blinked, confused. "That's me," he said. "I've been feeding you." The dragon's eye dimmed, then glowed faintly. "No, not you," it said. "Long ago another human came, a child with silver eyes. She fed me when your kind hunted us." Evan stared. "Silver eyes?" he repeated. "That can't be true. No human has eyes like that." The dragon's breathing turned shallow. "Find her," it whispered. Before I fade, bring her to me. Evan's heart pounded. The sound of thunder filled the cave again, but this time it felt closer, louder, almost alive. Outside, something bright flashed across the sky, not lightning, but metal. A patrol drone scanning the cliffs, its sensors hummed as it passed above the rocks, searching for illegal energy signals. Evan froze, pulling back deeper into the cave. The dragon's golden eye followed him. They come for what they fear, it said weakly. Do not let them find me. The sound of the drone grew louder, echoing through the canyon. Evan held his breath. He had never been this scared, not even when the soldiers raided the scrapyards for stolen tech. He looked at the dragon again, the last of its kind, fading before his eyes, and something in him changed. He felt anger, not fear, anger at the world that hunted what it didn't understand. The drone's red light appeared on the cave wall, searching, moving slowly closer. Evan whispered, "Stay quiet," and threw his jacket over the faint glow of the dragon's scales. The light passed by, then vanished. Evan didn't move for a long time. Only the sound of his heart filled the silence. Finally, the dragon spoke again, voice thin as smoke. When the sun dies and the sky bleeds red, she will come. Evan didn't know what that meant, but those words burned into his mind. Outside, the storm broke. Rain fell over the dead mountains, washing away the dust of ages. Evan looked out at the world and realized this was no longer about food or kindness. It was about something ancient waking again, and somewhere deep inside he felt it. A strange warmth under his skin, like a spark waiting to burn. The next morning, the sky over the city burned red, not from dawn, but from smoke. The metallic towers of the capital shimmered under the rising sun, black silhouettes against the orange haze. Drones hummed between skyscrapers, carrying banners that showed a dragon's skull surrounded by flames. The words below read, "Never again shall fire rule over man." Evan walked through the crowded streets, his heart heavy with secrets. He kept his hood low, eyes down, trying to look like every other tired worker. But inside, his mind wouldn't stop replaying the dragon's last words. "Bring me the child who fed me." He didn't know who that girl was, or why the dragon remembered her. But one thing was clear. The dragon was dying, and time was running out. Everywhere he went, the world reminded him of what humans had done. The city was built from old dragon bones, polished into white towers that glowed under the artificial sun. Even the trains ran on the ashes of the creatures they once feared. The people were proud, calling it progress. Posters covered the walls. Report all forbidden activity. Protect humanity's future. And beneath them, images of dragons burning. Some people stopped to stare at them with satisfaction, others with quiet unease. Evan's stomach twisted. He had to pretend like everyone else, like he didn't care, but he couldn't unsee the truth. A dragon that spoke with sorrow, not rage. A creature that wanted to see a child, not destroy a city. As he turned into an alley, a loudspeaker blared from a passing hovercraft. "Attention, citizens. An unidentified energy signal has been detected near the northern cliffs. All unauthorized travel beyond Checkpoint 7 is strictly forbidden." Evan froze. His heart skipped. They had found something. He hurried through the narrow paths behind the market, where old scavengers sold machine scraps and fossil dust. An old man sat beside a glowing heater, polishing a strange piece of metal that shimmered faintly red. "Dragon glass?" the old man whispered when Evan stopped to look. "Illegal but beautiful, ain't it?" Evan hesitated. "Where did you get that?" The man looked up, his eyes clouded but sharp. "From the ruins before the last cleansing. Boy, but I shouldn't have it, not unless I want my head on a wall." He chuckled bitterly. "They say even the ashes of dragons can wake fire." Evan's chest tightened. "Wake fire?" he repeated. The old man nodded, leaning closer. "You're too young to remember. But there was a time when the dragons didn't burn cities. They gave light, warmth. They kept storms away. Then the kings grew greedy. They wanted control, so they made the hunters. machines that kill fire itself. Evan's pulse raced. "And the girl with silver eyes?" he asked quietly. The man's smile faded. "So you've heard that name?" he whispered, looking around nervously. "There are stories, old ones, buried after the war. They say she was the daughter of a fire scientist, the first human child to ever feed a dragon without fear. But she vanished before the purge." Before Evan could ask more, 2 soldiers entered the alley, their armor shining silver, the mark of the flame guard glowing red on their chest plates. The crowd fell silent. "Inspection," one of them barked, scanning the stalls. "Contraband search." The old man shoved the dragon glass under his cloak, whispering, "Go, boy, now." Evan turned and slipped through the back of the alley, heartbeat thundering in his ears. He climbed over broken walls and metal fences until the city noise faded behind him. He reached the outskirts, the zone everyone feared to enter. The air here was colder, still carrying the scent of burnt stone. Above the horizon stood the broken towers of the old capital, half buried in ash. This was where it had all started, where the final battle between dragons and men had ended in smoke and silence. Evan walked carefully. The ground cracked under his boots, black dust rising like ghostly smoke. He passed rusted weapons, scorched banners, and the skeleton of a great machine, a dragon slayer drone. Its cannon still aimed toward the sky. He found an old station half collapsed. Inside it were walls covered in murals, faded but still visible. They showed dragons flying beside humans, not against them. One image made him stop. A small girl with silver eyes standing before a massive dragon. Feeding it from her hands, Evan felt a chill run through him. "She's real," he whispered, as he reached out to touch the painting. A loud metallic clang echoed behind him. He turned sharply, dust swirling through the air. From the shadows emerged a figure, tall, wearing a dark coat with the flame guard insignia. A commander, his voice cold. "You shouldn't be here." "Boy," Evan's throat went dry. I got lost," he said. The commander stepped closer. Holding a scanner that hummed faintly, the screen flickered, showing a burst of red light. The same kind of energy that came from dragonfire. The man's eyes narrowed. "Interesting. This energy, it's ancient. You've been near one of them." Evan stepped back slowly. "I don't know what you mean," he said, his voice shaking. The commander smiled, a cruel, knowing smile. "Oh, I think you do," he said. "We've been tracking the signal for days, and now here you are." He reached for his communicator. "Bring in the capture team." Evan's heart pounded. He looked around, no way out. The ruins were closing in like a trap. Then suddenly the ground trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling. A deep rumble rolled beneath his feet. The commander stopped, confused. What was that? Evan didn't answer, because he already knew that sound. It was faint, distant, but unmistakable. The heartbeat of the dying dragon. He ran, sprinting through the tunnels, ignoring the commander's shout behind him. His lungs burned, his mind spinning with fear and disbelief. Outside, the sky turned dark again. A storm was forming over the mountains, lightning flashing red like fire veins. He didn't stop until he saw the path leading back to the cliffs. Behind him, sirens began to wail across the city. The voice of the commander echoed through the radio towers. Target located near the northern cliffs. "All units, the dragon lives," Evan froze, breathing hard, staring at the clouds above the mountains. The dragon's cave was no longer safe. The world was coming for it. And as thunder split the sky in half, Evan realized something terrifying. The dragon wasn't the only one being hunted now. The storm had already reached the mountains when Evan arrived. The sky roared like a wounded beast, lightning tearing across the dark clouds. Rain fell in heavy sheets, soaking him to the bone. He climbed the narrow cliff path, his boots slipping on the wet stone. His chest ached, his lungs burned. But he didn't stop. When he finally reached the cave, he collapsed inside, gasping for breath. The air was thick with smoke and the scent of burning rock. The dragon was awake, its golden eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Its breath came slow and heavy, the light inside its chest flickering like a dying star. Evan dropped to his knees beside it.
"They know," he whispered, "the soldiers."
"They're coming." The dragon didn't move. Only its tail shifted slightly, scraping against the stone. Sparks flickered weakly in the air. "Then the end draws near," it said, its voice deep and distant. As it always was meant to be, Evan's heart clenched. "You can't die," he said. "You're the last one." The dragon's eyes dimmed. There were others who thought the same, it murmured. But time burns all things. Even fire. Evan clenched his fists, rain dripping from his hair. You said you wanted to see a child, he said, the one who fed you. Who was she? The dragon turned its gaze toward him, long and heavy. She was light in a dark age, it said slowly. A child who looked at a dragon and did not see a monster, but a friend. Evan frowned. A friend? The dragon nodded weakly. Her name was Lyra, it whispered. She came to me when the war began. She brought food, water, laughter. Her eyes were silver like moonlight. She said she wanted peace between our kind. Evan's pulse quickened. What happened to her? The dragon's voice grew softer. She vanished, taken by men who feared her gift, the power to hear us, to understand our hearts. It looked away. They said her blood was dangerous, that it carried the fire of both worlds. Evan froze. The fire of both worlds. Those words echoed in his head like thunder. He remembered his mother's face, pale and tired, the way she had always warned him never to go near the mountains, never to speak of fire, never to show anyone the strange birthmark on his wrist. A faint red curve shaped like a dragon's wing. His stomach turned. What if she's gone? He asked, his voice trembling. What if Lyra's dead? The dragon's breathing deepened, and for the first time it smiled. Then her spirit will guide you, it said, because the blood remembers what the mind forgets. Before Evan could ask what that meant, the cave rumbled, the ground shook, dust fell from the ceiling, and the dragon's eyes snapped open wide. They are here! Evan ran to the entrance. Lightning flashed outside, revealing black shapes descending through the storm. Soldiers in hover armor, carrying energy rifles that glowed blue in the rain. Unit 3 approaching the target zone, a metallic voice crackled from the comms. Thermal signature confirmed inside the cave. Evan's breath hitched. They'll kill you, he said. Turning to the dragon tried to rise, but its legs gave out, its massive body trembled. No, it said slowly. Not yet. It looked at him with fire behind its fading eyes. Evan, you must leave. You must find the truth of your blood. Evan shook his head. I'm not leaving you. The dragon's tail struck the ground, sparks flying. You will obey, it said, its voice like thunder now. If I fall and you remain, then my flame is not lost. You carry it, even if you do not yet see it. Evan felt something hot under his skin, a faint glow pulsing in his wrist, that same birthmark, now burning like a small ember. What's happening to me? He whispered. The dragon's gaze softened. The bond awakens, it said. The last of my fire seeks its next heart. Suddenly, an explosion shook the entrance. Rocks flew inward, blinding light filled the cave. Soldiers shouted, Contact! Target sighted. The dragon reared its head, its chest glowing bright red. The walls shook with the force of its growl. Go, now, it commanded. Evan hesitated, tears mixing with the rain on his face. I'll come back, he said. I promise. The dragon didn't answer. Its gaze was fixed on the soldiers entering the cave. Evan turned and ran through the narrow tunnels at the back. Ones he had never noticed before. The air burned, smoke rising as the dragon's power surged one last time. Outside, the storm had turned crimson, fire mixed with lightning. The mountains glowed like molten stone. Evan reached a ridge overlooking the cave. His heart broke as he saw what happened next. The dragon roared, a sound so deep it shook the clouds apart. Fire erupted from its mouth, bright as a dying sun. The soldiers' armor melted under the blast. Their screams vanished in the thunder. But even as the dragon burned its enemies, its body began to crumble. Pieces of its scales falling like glowing ash, and through the storm, Evan heard its final words echo in his mind. Find her. Find the child of silver eyes. And remember, the fire that dies will rise again. Then came silence. The cave collapsed. The storm began to fade. Only ashes floated through the air. Glowing softly in the rain, Evan fell to his knees. Staring at the ruins, his mind empty, his chest aching with grief and confusion. He wanted to scream, to cry, to run back, but he couldn't move. The air around him shimmered faintly, a warmth spreading from his chest outward. He looked down. The mark on his wrist glowed brighter, and for a moment he heard the faint echo of a heartbeat that wasn't his own. In that instant, he understood. Part of the dragon lived inside him now. The storm cleared slowly, revealing the distant lights of the city below. Soldiers' transports moving like tiny stars through the clouds, searching for something they would never find. Evan stood trembling, The world felt different now, quieter. Heavier alive, he whispered into the wind. I'll find her. The rain fell gently, washing away the ash, and far in the distance, where the mountains met the sea, a faint light flickered in the sky, like the eye of another dragon, watching, waiting. The next dawn came pale and quiet. The storm had passed, but the mountains still smoked like dying fires. Evan moved through the ruins with heavy steps, his heart empty yet burning. Every time the wind blew, he swore he could still hear the dragon's last heartbeat inside his chest, faint but alive. He walked until the cliffs ended and the wasteland began. There the world was nothing but gray dust and rusted metal, the bones of the old war buried under the earth. The soldiers were gone, the scanners silent. For the first time since the attack, he was alone, truly alone. But something inside him had changed. His vision flickered at the edges. Colors too bright, sounds too sharp. He could hear whispers in the wind. Not words, but feelings. Sorrow, fear, hope. It was like the mountain itself was breathing. Evan looked at his wrist. The birthmark was glowing again, not red anymore, but golden. It pulsed softly, like a heart trying to speak. He whispered, "What are you trying to tell me?" A memory surfaced, his mother's voice, soft and frightened. "Never let them see it, Evan. Promise me." He had promised, but he never knew why. Now, every secret she had kept from him pressed against his mind like a locked door. He knew where he had to go. The ruins of the old capital. The place where the first dragon experiments had begun. If there were answers, they would be there by nightfall. He reached the edge of the dead city. The once great towers were blackened and hollow, their windows shattered like broken eyes. Signs of old battles were everywhere, burned symbols, melted weapons. The air smelled of iron and dust. He passed through the old gates, their metal twisted and half-melted. Above them, carved into the stone, were the words, "For the triumph of man." Evan's chest tightened. He had grown up believing humans had saved the world from monsters. Now he wasn't sure who the monsters really were. Inside, the city was silent, but not empty. He saw shadows moving between buildings and scavengers, outcasts, people who lived among the ghosts of the past. One of them, a woman wrapped in a torn cloak, stopped him. Her eyes glowed faintly under the moonlight. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "The Flame Guard patrols these ruins at night." "I'm looking for something," Evan said. "Old research archives about dragons, about a girl named Lyra." At the sound of that name, the woman froze, her gaze sharpened. "Lyra," she whispered. "That name is forbidden." "Then you know it," Evan said quickly. She studied him for a long moment, then motioned for him to follow. They entered an underground tunnel hidden beneath a collapsed statue. The air grew colder, darker. The woman lit a small lantern, revealing walls covered in faded writing. "These are the last records of the Fireborn program," she said. "Before the world burned," Evan frowned. "Fireborn?" She nodded slowly. "A government project, and they wanted to harness dragon energy, merge it with human DNA, create a new kind of soldier, one who could control fire instead of fear it." Evan felt his stomach twist. "That's impossible." "Not impossible," she said. "Just forbidden." They reached a metal door sealed with rust and old blood. The woman pressed her hand against a scanner. It buzzed weakly, then unlocked with a heavy hiss. Inside was a lab frozen in time, broken glass everywhere, tubes and wires hanging from the ceiling. On one of the walls, half-burned documents clung to the metal. Evan stepped closer and brushed away the dust. His eyes widened as he read the heading. Subject 47, Lyra Voss, hybrid prototype success rate, 97%. His heart pounded. "She was an experiment," he whispered. The woman nodded. "She wasn't the only one," Evan turned. "What do you mean?" The woman's lantern flickered, throwing shadows across her face. There were others later, after the war. They used Lyra's blood to continue the research, to make new hybrids. She looked straight at him. Children who would carry the dragon's fire without knowing it. Evan stepped back, the room spinning. "No, you're lying." She shook her head. "Your mother was one of the scientists, wasn't she?" "Dr. Marin Voss." Evan froze, his breath caught in his throat. "How do you know her name?" "Because she saved you," the woman said. "She ran when the project turned dark. She took one of the embryos, you, and hid you among the scrapyard families. But they found her years later." Her voice softened. "They said she burned the lab before they could take you back." Evan's knees gave out. He sat on the floor, shaking, his mind filled with images of his mother's trembling hands. Her endless fear of fire, her warnings to stay hidden, he whispered. She knew all along, the woman nodded. And now they'll come for you too. Before Evan could speak, a sudden noise echoed from the tunnel behind them. Boots striking metal. Radio chatter. The woman's face paled. "They're here," she hissed. "Run!" The door burst open, soldiers poured in, beams of blue light slicing through the dark. "Freeze!" one shouted. "By order of the High Chancellor, you are under arrest." Evan grabbed the old data chip from the wall, the one marked Project Lyra, and sprinted toward the back exit. Blaster fire erupted. Sparks exploded across the lab. The woman shouted something, but her voice was drowned by the sound of gunfire. Evan ran through a narrow passage, the ground trembling from explosions. He burst out onto the surface, gasping. The night sky above the ruins was lit by flames. He didn't stop running until he reached the edge of the city. Collapsing behind a broken statue, his hands were shaking as he looked at the data chip glowing faintly in his palm. Through the smoke, he could see the soldiers searching, their lights sweeping the streets like cold stars. He whispered to himself, "If she's my mother, and Lyra's blood is in me." Then the dragon wasn't wrong. The mark on his wrist pulsed again. Brighter this time, a wave of heat ran through his body. His vision blurred, and for a moment he saw something impossible. A memory that wasn't his own. A little girl with silver eyes stood beside the dragon, her hand resting on its snout. The world around her burned, and yet she smiled, calm and fearless. "Don't be afraid," she whispered. "The fire protects those who believe." Evan gasped and fell back. The image fading, he looked toward the horizon, where the first light of dawn touched the clouds. He knew what he had to do now: find the truth, find Lyra, find the reason dragons had trusted humans once. Because somewhere deep inside, the fire was waking again, and the world would soon learn that the line between man and dragon had never truly disappeared. Dawn crawled across the wasteland, cold and gray. The ruins behind Evan still burned, smoke curling into the sky like black serpents. His clothes were torn, his hands shaking. But he kept walking, step after step, through the endless dust. He didn't know where he was going, only that he had to move. The data chip clutched in his fist felt heavier with every mile. Inside it waited answers he both needed and feared. The wind howled around him, whispering voices he couldn't understand. Every now and then he heard the echo of wings, but when he looked up there was nothing, only clouds rolling across the pale sun. He found an abandoned train tunnel and slipped inside. The darkness wrapped around him like a blanket. He sat down against the cold wall, his chest aching. When he closed his eyes, he saw fire, not outside but within. It moved like liquid light beneath his skin. Warm and alive, he pressed his palm to his chest, the glow of the mark bleeding through the fabric. "What are you doing to me?" he whispered. A faint heartbeat answered. Not his own, slow and ancient. Then came a voice, soft, familiar, echoing inside his mind. "Do not fear the flame. It was never meant to burn you." Evan jerked awake. Looking around, the tunnel was empty. The voice was gone. Yet the warmth in his body lingered, stronger than before. He opened the data chip with a small handheld reader. Lines of code and old files flickered to life. Diagrams, notes, and photos filled the screen. One image made his breath catch. His mother, standing beside a younger woman with silver eyes, both smiling. The caption read, "Lyra Voss, Prototype A, Dr. Marin Voss, lead researcher." He stared at it for a long time. His mother hadn't just known Lyra. She had worked with her, maybe even saved her. The next file was encrypted. He tried every password he could think of until one suddenly worked on its own. The screen glowed bright red. Then lines of text appeared. "Emergency protocol. If Project Lyra fails, transfer sequence 47 to host subject M. Voss genetic line. Code key Fireheart." Evan whispered the word under his breath. Fireheart. And the device reacted, a pulse of energy surging through his hand. The mark on his wrist flared gold, and heat filled the tunnel. The walls began to glow faintly, as if the stone itself remembered the dragon's breath. He dropped the reader, gasping. Flames curled from his fingers, not burning him, just moving like living threads of light. They danced in the air, forming shapes that flickered between memory and dream. A dragon's face, a girl's silhouette, the symbol of a winged circle. Then the sound of engines broke the silence, distant at first, then closer. He ran to the tunnel entrance and saw 3 hovercrafts sweeping over the valley. searchlights cutting through the smoke. "They're still tracking me," he muttered. He turned deeper into the tunnel system, following faint signs left from before the war. Old symbols scratched into the walls guided him through turns and descents until he found a hidden chamber, a massive underground vault carved from black stone. At its center stood a crystal pod cracked open. Inside lay the remains of a dragon egg, hollow and shimmering like glass. Around it were strange machines humming faintly with life. Even after decades of silence, Evan stepped closer, feeling the heat rising from the ground. The heartbeat in his chest matched the pulse of the machines. Suddenly the air shimmered, and a hologram flickered to life. A projection of his mother, pale and tired but smiling gently. "If you're seeing this, Evan," her voice said, "then the fire has chosen you." He froze, listening. "The dragons were never our enemies," she continued. "They were our balance, our protectors, but fear made us blind. I tried to stop them from weaponizing the flame. I failed, but I saved one life, yours. You carry both human and dragon blood now. You are Fireheart." The image glitched, static filling the air. "Find Lyra. She lives in the ruins of the southern spires, guarded by the last keepers. Only she can help you control what's inside you." Then the hologram faded. The vault fell silent again, only the sound of Evan's heartbeat echoing. He whispered, "She's alive," before he could move. The tunnel shook violently. Explosions thundered from above. Dust rained from the ceiling. The hovercrafts had found him. He ran toward the exit. But soldiers were already dropping down from ropes, blue lights flashing from their helmets. "Target confirmed." One shouted. Evan raised his hands, backing away. "I don't want to fight," he yelled. The commander at the front smiled coldly. "Then burn for your crime." They fired, blue plasma bolts tearing through the air. Instinct took over. The world slowed. His pulse roared in his ears, and the fire inside him surged forward. Light exploded from his body, golden and wild. The flames moved not like destruction, but like wind and water. Wrapping around him, the plasma bolts dissolved before touching him. Turning to sparks, the soldiers screamed. Shields failing, one shouted, "He's a hybrid!" Evan didn't want to hurt them, but the power was no longer his to hold back. The fire roared outward, forming the shadow of a dragon above him. Its eyes blazed like suns. The hovercrafts outside tried to flee, but a wave of heat knocked them from the sky, crashing into the valley with blinding explosions. When the flames finally faded, the tunnel was silent again. The soldiers lay unconscious. The air filled with glowing dust. Evan stood at the center, breathing hard, his hands trembling. He looked down. His eyes reflected gold now. His veins pulsed with faint light. The mark on his wrist had changed into a full symbol, a dragon coiled around a human heart. He whispered, terrified, "What am I becoming?" In the distance, alarms echoed from the city. The flame guard would not stop. The chancellor would come himself if he had to. Evan turned toward the south, toward the horizon glowing faintly red in the early dawn. He tightened his fist around the data chip. "Lyra," he said, "I'm coming," behind him. Deep in the tunnels, the shattered dragon egg began to glow again, a low hum filling the air as if answering his words. Outside, the wind carried ash and light across the wasteland. The fire had awakened and the hunt had just begun. The sky above the wasteland glowed the color of dying embers. For 3 days, Evan moved south through the broken plains, hiding by day and walking by night. Every horizon carried smoke from cities that once hunted dragons. Every wind carried the faint metallic taste of war. The world knew his name now. The broadcast called him the Hybrid Terror. They showed images of the fallen soldiers in burning tunnels, twisting the story until it sounded like a nightmare. People whispered that a half-dragon boy had risen to finish what the ancient beasts began. Evan watched one of those broadcasts on a flickering screen inside a ruined diner. His own face stared back at him, the golden eyes edited to look demonic. He turned the screen off and whispered, "They'll never believe the truth." The mark on his wrist pulsed gently, a reminder that the fire inside him wasn't evil. It was alive, waiting. At sunset, he reached the edge of the southern spires, a forest of metal and stone, towers broken and hollow, vines curling through shattered windows. Lightning flickered between the spires like living veins. And somewhere deep inside that labyrinth was Lyra, the girl who fed dragons. As he entered the ruins, a whisper rose around him, the echo of voices not human, words too ancient for language but filled with feeling. "Welcome, Fireheart," He stopped, heart pounding. Who's there? Figures appeared between the columns. Cloaked in gray, their eyes shimmered faint gold. Not human, not dragon. Something between. One stepped forward. An older woman with lines of light across her skin. You finally came, she said. Your mother's message reached us long ago. You're the keepers, Evan said softly, remembering his mother's recording. She nodded. We guard what remains of both worlds, and we've been waiting for the one who carries the living flame. I'm not what you think, he said. I didn't choose this, the fire, it kills. It saves, she answered. If you learn to listen. She led him through winding corridors into a vast chamber lit by blue crystals. At its center stood a figure surrounded by gentle light, a young woman with silver eyes. Hair like moonlight, she turned as if she had known he would come. Lyra, Evan breathed, she smiled faintly. You carry his heart, he didn't understand. Whose? The last dragon, she said, stepping closer. The one who died to keep the flame alive, he gave his heart to you, not as a weapon, but as a memory. Her gaze softened. You feel his thoughts, don't you? His grief, his hope. Evan nodded slowly. Every night, he whispered, I hear him calling. I see fire in my dreams. Lyra raised her hand and touched the glowing mark on his wrist. The chamber darkened and filled with light at once. Images burst around them. Dragons soaring beside humans. Cities shining under twin suns, laughter, music, peace. Then everything turned red. War, betrayal, chains. When the vision faded, Evan fell to his knees, gasping. Why did it happen? Lyra's voice trembled. Because the High Chancellor made them believe dragons wanted power. He feared their fire, so he used us, the hybrids, to destroy them from within. Evan's blood turned cold. You mean? Yes, she said, tears in her eyes. The first fireborn soldiers carried both human courage and dragon flame. We were created to end the dragons, and when it was done, they tried to erase us too. Evan shook his head. That can't be true. It is, said another voice, low and calm. From the shadows at the edge of the chamber stepped a tall figure in black armor. His cloak marked with the symbol of the Flame Guard. His face was lined with age and pride. The High Chancellor himself. Lyra's breath caught. How did you? He smiled coldly. You think I would not watch the southern spires? The last keepers have hidden here too long. Soldiers poured in from every tunnel. Weapons glowing. The chamber filled with blue light and the hum of charging rifles. Evan stepped in front of Lyra. You lied to the world, he said, his voice shaking with rage. The Chancellor's eyes burned like coals. I gave the world peace, he replied. Dragons were chaos, you are chaos. I ended it. They tried to protect us. Evan shouted, They gave fire to keep us alive. Fire always devours its masters, the Chancellor said. Raising his hand, now the last flame dies, the soldiers fired. Blinding energy streaked through the air. Evan felt the world slow again. His heartbeat merged with the dragon's. The power inside him roared to life. Flame burst from his skin, forming a shield of light that swallowed the blasts. He moved like the wind, not thinking, only feeling. Every movement left trails of fire. Every step shook the stone. The soldiers fell one by one. Their armor melting like wax, the Chancellor stepped back. Stunned. Impossible, he hissed. Evan's voice echoed through the hall, calm and terrible. You built your kingdom on lies. The Chancellor drew a weapon shaped like a spear, ancient and humming with blue fire. Then truth will burn with you, he said, and lunged. Their clash shook the chamber. Sparks and embers filled the air. The spear struck Evan's chest, but instead of piercing, it melted, absorbed by the fire that flowed through him. Evan grabbed the Chancellor's arm, light blazing from his palm. You wanted to control fire, he said. Now meet it. The blast threw the Chancellor across the chamber, crashing into a pillar. The ceiling cracked, rocks raining down. Lyra shouted, Evan, stop! The whole place will fall. But he couldn't stop. The flame inside him wanted justice. It wanted truth. It wanted to speak. Then, through the roar of battle, he heard a familiar voice inside his mind. The dragon's voice. Fireheart. Remember Mercy? Evan froze. His body trembling. The flames dimmed, his breathing slowed. He turned toward the Chancellor, broken but alive. I'm not your weapon, Evan said quietly. I'm your mirror. Outside. Thunder exploded across the horizon, but it wasn't a storm. It was something greater. Thousands of glowing shapes rising through the clouds. Lyra ran to the shattered window, her eyes wide. "They're waking," she whispered. "The dragon's spirits." The sky burned gold as light formed into wings. The air itself seemed to sing, deep and ancient. Every living being across the wasteland stopped to listen. Evan stepped to the edge, his voice soft. "They remember," Lyra looked at him. "What will you do now?" He turned his gaze toward the distant capital, its towers shining like cold knives in the sunlight. "End the lie," he said, "and free the fire." The keepers knelt around them, whispering prayers older than memory. The flames outside grew brighter. The war of truth had begun. The dawn rose red over the capital. Firelight shimmered through the clouds, painting the towers in gold and blood. From the highest spire, the city's alarms howled like dying beasts. Soldiers ran through the streets, shouting orders that no one could understand. Above them, the sky burned with wings. Thousands of glowing shapes spiraled through the clouds. Spirits of dragons. Reborn from light and memory, they moved without sound, their bodies woven from flame and shadow, filling the heavens with terrible beauty. At the heart of the storm, Evan and Lyra stood atop the ruins of the southern spires. The air trembled around them, fire drifting like falling snow. The dragon's voice still whispered in Evan's chest, calm and steady. "The time has come, Fireheart." Lyra turned toward him, her silver eyes reflecting the sky. "They'll come for us," she said. "Every army, every machine." Evan looked at the city below. "Then we give them the truth before they destroy it." Far away, in the capital's command tower, the High Chancellor rose from the rubble of the shattered chamber, his armor scorched. His pride cracked but unbroken. He stared at the skies and saw what he had feared his entire life. The return of the dragons, not as beasts of war, but as light and conscience. He slammed his fist against the console. "Fire on the skies!" he shouted. "Bring them down!" The city's defense cannons turned upward, massive metal mouths glowing blue. The sound of charging plasma filled the air. Evan felt it, even from miles away. The ground trembled as the first barrage launched. The explosions tore through the clouds. But the dragons didn't fall. Their forms shimmered and split into hundreds of smaller lights weaving around the blasts. Each spark carried the echo of a voice, a song, ancient and sorrowful. It wasn't an attack. It was a memory. Lyra closed her eyes, whispering, "They're showing the world what really happened." And below, across the cities, the illusion spread, not as fire, but as visions. People saw it everywhere. Dragons flying beside humans, sharing warmth, guarding villages. Then came the betrayal. Machines rising, kings turning against their allies, the slaughter of the sky. Citizens dropped their weapons, soldiers froze. The truth broke through the fear. The Chancellor watched in disbelief as his people began to kneel. Not to him, but to the light. "No," he screamed. "They'll destroy everything we built." Evan's voice carried across the winds, not loud but strong. "You built your world on ashes." He leapt from the cliffside, the fire lifting him like invisible wings. He flew through the storm of light, his body surrounded by the golden flame. Each heartbeat matched the rhythm of 1,000 dragon spirits. Lyra followed, her eyes glowing, streams of silver light swirling around her hands. Together they descended toward the capital. The Chancellor raised his weapon again, but his soldiers no longer obeyed. They stood frozen, watching the two glowing figures approach, the boy of fire and the girl of moonlight. When Evan landed on the tower's roof, the flames around him dimmed to a gentle glow. "It doesn't have to end in war," he said. The Chancellor's voice broke. "You don't understand. Fire always takes. It never gives." Evan stepped closer. "Then you never saw what it could give." He opened his palm, revealing a small ember, the last piece of the dragon's heart. It floated upward, burning soft and pure. "Fire destroys," he said quietly. "But it also heals. It gives light to those who live in the dark." The ember drifted toward the Chancellor, who stared at it, trembling. For a brief second, his reflection glowed in the flame, a younger man full of hope, not fear. Then tears rolled down his face. "I was afraid," he whispered. "Afraid of what we couldn't control." Evan nodded. That fear ended your world once. Don't let it end again. He turned toward the city below and raised his hand. The sky blazed brighter. Dragons of light swooped low over the towers. Their fire fell gently, washing over the streets, not burning but cleansing. The ruins shimmered. The metal walls softened, and from beneath the cracked earth, green began to grow. People stepped outside, shielding their eyes. They felt warmth on their skin, warmth that didn't harm, but healed. The air no longer smelled of smoke. Lyra stood beside Evan, tears in her eyes. "You did it," she whispered. He shook his head. "We did it, and him." He looked at the sky where the largest dragon spirit circled above, its golden eyes watching. The spirit lowered its head, bowing slowly. For the first time in centuries, a dragon bowed to a human again. Evan bowed back, whispering, "Thank you, old friend." Then, one by one, the dragons began to fade into light, merging with the clouds, their song echoing across the horizon. It was a sound of peace, of endings and beginnings. The fire inside Evan's chest grew quiet. Still warm but calm, Lyra touched his shoulder. "What happens now?" He looked toward the distant sea, where the dawn met the horizon. "Now we rebuild," he said softly. "A world where fire belongs to both." As they walked down from the tower, the people watched in silence. Some knelt, some reached out to touch the air where flames had passed. None spoke, but everyone knew. The age of lies had ended. When they reached the base, an old child approached, holding a burnt piece of bread in her tiny hands. "For you," she said shyly. "You must be hungry." Evan smiled and knelt, taking it gently. The warmth of the bread reminded him of the nights in the cave, of feeding the dying dragon piece by piece. He looked up at the sky, whispering, "You asked to see the child who fed you." His voice broke into a quiet smile. "Now the world has seen her spirit." The wind rose, carrying the faint sound of wings. The age of fire was reborn, not in war, but in hope. And in the heart of every living thing, a single ember glowed, the memory of a boy, a dragon, and the forbidden kindness that saved them all.